The day everything went sideways started like any other boring cycle in the Galactic Council chambers. I'm Vex, by the way. Chief Intelligence Analyst for the Hegemony, which sounds impressive until you realize I spend most rotations watching surveillance feeds of humans doing, well, human things. Another report, Vex. Grand Marshal Korthak's voice carried that familiar note of annoyance. The massive reptilian leader's scales rippled with barely contained irritation as he gestured at the holographic display floating between us. Yes, sir. The humans have established another colony, this time in the Outer Rim. I tried to keep my tone neutral, though honestly, I was getting tired of these briefings too. How many does that make now? 47 confirmed settlements, sir, all within the past solar cycle. Korthak's laugh rumbled through the chamber like grinding metal. 47? These mammals breed like plague spores, no matter. We'll crush them like we did the Zentari. Ah, the Zentari. Poor bastards never saw it coming. One day they were a proud spacefaring civilization, the next they were scattered ash floating in the void. The hegemony doesn't believe in half measures. Sir, if I may, I hesitated, knowing what I was about to say wouldn't be popular. The humans are different from previous species we've encountered. Different how? Korthak's eyes narrowed to golden slits. They don't surrender, sir. Ever. We've observed 17 separate conflicts where they've chosen mutual destruction over capitulation. Their saying goes something like better dead than conquered. Primitive bravado. Korthak waved a clawed hand dismissively. Every species thinks they're special until they face the might of the hegemony. I pulled up the next file, my heart sinking. There's more, sir. Intelligence indicates they've been preparing. Preparing for what? War. With us. The silence that followed could have powered a small moon. Korthak's breathing grew heavy, steam rising from his nostrils. When he finally spoke, his voice was dangerously quiet. They what? According to our sources, human military production has increased by 300% over the past rotation. They've been stockpiling weapons, fortifying positions, and I swallowed hard. They've been studying us. They've been studying us. Studying us how? Every battle we've fought, every tactic we've used, every weakness we've shown. They have detailed files on our entire military structure. I gestured to the holographic data streaming past us. Sir, they know things about our forces that some of our own commanders don't know. Korthak stood abruptly, his massive frame casting shadows across the chamber. Impossible. Our security is absolute. That's what we thought about the Zentari communication networks too, sir. Until the humans cracked those encryption codes in, what was it, 18 minutes? That was different. The Zentari were technologically inferior, so are the humans, sir. Technically speaking, I highlighted another section of the report. Their computing power is roughly equivalent to what we had 500 cycles ago. Their ships are held together with what they call duct tape and prayers. Their weapons are projectile-based instead of energy-based. Then how? They think differently, sir. Where we see a fortified position, they see 17 different ways to infiltrate it. Where we see superior firepower, they see opportunities. Korthak's laugh was sharp and bitter. Opportunities? Against the hegemony fleet? Do you remember the siege of Proxima Station, sir? Of course. Complete hegemony victory. The humans lost everything. They lost the station, yes. But they also managed to disable 3 of our dreadnoughts, capture 2 supply convoys, and steal enough classified intelligence to, I paused, realizing how this was going to sound, to reverse engineer our shield technology. The Grand Marshal's roar could probably be heard 3 sectors away. What? They call it aggressive acquisition of enemy assets, sir. Apparently, they've been doing it for their entire recorded history. They have manuals on it. Manuals? Very detailed ones, including a section titled How to Turn Your Enemy's Strength Against Them While Making Jokes About Their Mothers. Korthak stared at me for a long moment. You're making that up. I wish I was, sir. I pulled up the translated document. It's part of their military doctrine. They actually have an entire branch of warfare dedicated to creative improvisation. What does that even mean? Well, for example, during the Battle of Kepler 442, when our forces had them completely surrounded, they used their waste disposal system to launch a surprise counterattack. Their what? Waste disposal, sir. Sewage. They fired organic matter at our sensor arrays, blinding our targeting systems long enough to escape. The Grand Marshal looked like he was developing a headache. They attacked us with excrement, among other things, yes, sir. The after-action report also mentions something called a kitchen sink offensive, though our translators are still working on that one. Korthak slumped back into his command throne. This gets worse, doesn't it? Much worse, sir. According to intelligence, they've been sharing tactics with every species we've conquered, the survivors. Anyway, that's impossible. We monitor all communications. They don't use traditional communication methods, sir. They use something called graffiti. What? Primitive markings on walls, sir. Apparently, they've developed an entire symbolic language that looks like random vandalism to us but contains detailed tactical information to anyone who knows how to read it. I highlighted another section of the report. Our xenoarchaeologists only figured it out after finding the same symbols on wreckage from 17 different battles. The humans have been leaving instructions for future resistance movements. You mean to tell me, Korthak's voice was deadly quiet, that these primitive mammals have been conducting psychological warfare through graffiti? Yes, sir. Including what our translators believe are suggestions about our intelligence, our appearance, and the legitimacy of our parentage. They're mocking us. Extensively, sir. The Grand Marshal was quiet for a long time, processing this information. Finally, he spoke. What do they want? To be left alone, sir. That's it? That's it. They've sent 17 different diplomatic messages asking us to avoid their territory. Very polite ones, actually. Please and thank you and everything. And if we don't... I pulled up the final section of the report, the one I'd been dreading. They sent one more message, sir. 3 days ago. What did it say? It was brief. I cleared my throat. Quote, "You want war? Then you've chosen death. Stop now, or find out why nothing else in this galaxy has tried to conquer Earth twice." Unquote. Korthak's laugh started as a chuckle but quickly became something unhinged. Death? They're threatening the hegemony with death? These mammals who fight with sewage and graffiti? Get to India. This buck winters. Reddits, sir, if I may point out. Silence. His roar shook the chamber. I've heard enough. Deploy the First Fleet. We'll show these humans what happens when someone threatens the hegemony. Sir, I really think we should consider. I said silence. How many ships do they have, Vex? I consulted my datapad reluctantly. Approximately 2,000 vessels of various classes, sir. 2,000? Korthak's grin showed too many teeth. We have 50,000 ships in the First Fleet alone. This will be over before it begins. Sir, about those 2,000 ships, what about them? They're unusual, sir. Our scouts report that several of them appear to be converted civilian vessels, cargo haulers, passenger liners, even what looks like a luxury cruise ship, even better. They're so desperate they're arming civilians, sir. That's not desperation. According to human military history, that's called total war mobilization. When humans do that, I paused, checking my historical data. No one has ever survived it, sir, because no one has ever fought the hegemony before. Immetus. Actually, sir, that's not quite accurate. We've studied their historical conflicts, and when humans engage in total war mobilization, they don't just win. They restructure entire continents. They've done it at least 6 times in their recorded history, and each time, I swallowed hard. Each time, their enemies cease to exist entirely. Propaganda and fear-mongering. Sir, they have something called World War II in their historical records. It lasted 6 of their years, involved every major nation on their planet, and ended with them literally splitting atoms to create new forms of warfare. In 6 years. They went from propeller-driven aircraft to nuclear weapons. So that's their normal progression rate during total war, sir. They don't just adapt, they evolve, and they've had 50 years to prepare for us." Korthak was quiet for a moment. "What are you suggesting, Vex?" "I'm suggesting we take their offer, sir. Leave them alone. Focus our expansion elsewhere. There are dozens of other sectors with resources and no organized resistance. The hegemony does not retreat. It's not retreat, sir. It's strategic resource allocation. It's cowardice. And I won't hear another word of it." Korthak stood again, his massive frame radiating authority. "Send the order. The First Fleet mobilizes at dawn. We'll crush these humans and make an example of them for the rest of the galaxy." "Yes, sir." I began composing the message, though every instinct I had was screaming warnings. "And if they resist longer than expected, then we deploy the Second Fleet. And the third, and however many it takes until there's nothing left of their species but space dust and cautionary tales." I finished the transmission and watched it ping across the hegemony communication network. Within minutes, acknowledgments began flowing back from fleet commanders across 3 sectors. 50,000 ships, the largest armada in galactic history, beginning to converge on human space. "How long until they reach the human systems, sir?" 12 standard rotations. Plenty of time for them to contemplate their mistake. As I gathered my reports and prepared to leave, one final piece of intelligence caught my attention. A small notation from our deep space monitoring stations. "Sir, there's one more thing." "What now?" "Now, our monitoring stations report unusual activity in human space. They appear to be moving things." "What kind of things?" "Everything, sir. Every ship, every station, every piece of equipment. They're repositioning their entire civilization." "Retreating?" "Unknown, sir. But the pattern doesn't match any known retreat configuration. It looks more like," I paused, cross-referencing the formation against historical databases. "Sir, it looks like they're forming a defensive formation around something." "Around what?" We don't know, sir. Whatever it is, it's generating massive energy signatures, enough to power their entire fleet 10 times over." Korthak's expression grew thoughtful. "A weapon?" Possibly, sir. Or possibly something worse." "What's worse than a weapon?" I looked at the energy readings again, compared them to everything in our databases. The closest match was impossible. It couldn't be what the data suggested. Sir, if these readings are accurate, they've built something that shouldn't be possible with their technology level. Something that generates more power than our entire battle fleet combined. They're impossible. That's what I thought too, sir. But the readings don't lie." Korthak was quiet for a long moment, staring at the tactical displays showing the convergence of our massive fleet toward human space. Finally, he spoke. "It doesn't matter. 50,000 ships, Vex, whatever they've built, whatever they're planning, they can't stand against the might of the hegemony." As I left the command center, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were making a terrible mistake. The humans had been very clear in their final message. They hadn't threatened us with defeat or conquest or any of the usual diplomatic language. They had threatened us with death. And everything I'd learned about human history suggested they didn't make threats they couldn't deliver on. 12 rotations until contact. I had a feeling that was going to be the longest 12 rotations in hegemony history, assuming any of us lived to tell about it afterward. 11 rotations later, I was standing in the same command center, watching our glorious First Fleet approach human space. 50,000 ships in perfect formation, their combined firepower capable of glassing entire star systems. It should have been magnificent. Instead, I felt like I was watching a funeral procession. Status report. Vex. Grand Marshal Korthak's voice held none of yesterday's confidence. The past rotation had brought increasingly disturbing intelligence reports. Fleet Admiral Gorvek reports all ships in position, sir. Forward scouts have reached the outer edge of human territory. I paused, checking the latest transmissions. Sir, the humans are responding. How so? They're broadcasting on all frequencies. Music, sir. Music? Something called Welcome to the Jungle, followed by another one, Bites the Dust. Our translators are having difficulty with the cultural context, but the general tone seems celebratory. Korthak's scales rippled with confusion. They're celebrating our arrival? Unknown, sir. Though there's also something called "We Are the Champions" playing on repeat near their primary defensive positions. Madness. Korthak activated the fleet communication array. Admiral Gorvek report. The holographic projection of our fleet commander materialized before us. Admiral Gorvek looked troubled. His usual military bearing seemed strained. Grand Marshal. We have a problem. Explain. The humans aren't where they're supposed to be, sir. What do you mean? I mean their fleet isn't defending their colonies. According to our intelligence, they should have forces positioned around their major population centers. Instead, Gorvek gestured to his tactical display. They're all here. Every single human ship, concentrated in one location. I felt my blood freeze. All of them in one place? Correct. 2,000 ships, just as intelligence reported, but they're not spread out defending multiple targets. They're clustered around something. Around what? Korthak demanded. We don't know, sir. It's massive, roughly the size of a small moon, but it's not showing up on our standard sensors. We can detect its gravitational effects. But visually, Gorvek shook his head. It's like looking at empty space. A cloaking device? Go, not like any we've encountered. This isn't hiding the object, it's making it completely invisible to most of our detection equipment. We only know it's there because the human ships are arranged around it in perfect formation. I was furiously cross-referencing this information with everything we knew about human technology. Nothing matched. They shouldn't have been capable of building anything that could evade our sensors so completely. Sir, I interrupted. Request permission to review the latest intelligence updates. Granted. I pulled up the files that had been accumulating over the past rotation. What I found made my 3 hearts skip several beats. Grand Marshal, we have a significant problem. More problems. Wonderful. Sir, remember those energy readings we detected? The ones that were impossibly high for human technology? Yes. They've tripled, sir. Whatever they built, it's now generating enough power to run our entire home system. That's impossible. The readings don't lie, sir. And there's more. I highlighted another section of the report. Our deep space monitoring stations have been going offline, one by one. Enemy action? Guess, unknown. They just stopped transmitting. No distress signals, no signs of attack. They simply ceased to exist. Admiral Gorvek's projection flickered. Grand Marshal, we're receiving a transmission from the humans. Put it through. The view screen shifted to show a human female, probably in her middle-age cycles by their standards. She was sitting in what appeared to be a command chair, wearing what humans called a uniform. Behind her, other humans moved with practiced efficiency. I am Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Force. Her voice was calm, almost conversational. You are currently trespassing in human territorial space. This is your final warning to withdraw. Korthak's laugh echoed through the chamber. Final warning? You're outnumbered 25-1. Actually, Admiral Chen smiled, and I felt a chill run down my spine. You're outnumbered. You just don't know it yet. Impossible. We can see your pathetic fleet. You can see some of our fleet, she corrected. The part we wanted you to see. Before anyone could respond, our tactical displays began screaming warnings. Ships. Thousands of them. Appearing out of nowhere behind our formation, beside it, above it, below it. They seemed to materialize from empty space itself. What, how? Korthak stared at the displays in disbelief. Stealth technology, Admiral Chen explained pleasantly. We've been working on it since we first detected your scout ships 50 years ago. Turns out, when you're motivated by the complete annihilation of your species, you develop some interesting innovations. Admiral Gorvek's voice crackled through the comm. Grand Marshal, we're reading over 15,000 human vessels. Where did they come from? We built them, Chen answered, apparently listening to our communications. Did you really think 2,000 ships was our entire fleet? That was just the welcoming committee. I was frantically running calculations, sir. If they have 15,000 ships, and each one is capable of the firepower we've observed, they still can't match the hegemony's might. Korthak roared, though his voice carried less certainty than before. Can't we? Admiral Chen's smile widened. Computer showed them the Omega Project. The space behind the human fleet changed. The invisible object, the thing the size of a small moon, suddenly became visible, and I wished immediately that it hadn't. It wasn't a ship. It wasn't a weapon. It was something else entirely. Something that made our largest dreadnoughts look like toys. The structure was impossibly complex, covered in what looked like millions of weapon emplacements, shield generators, and things I couldn't even identify. What is that thing? Korthak whispered. We call it the reality check, Admiral Chen replied. 50 years of preparation, Marshal. 50 years of every human scientist, engineer, and strategist working toward one goal, making sure that if anyone was stupid enough to threaten Earth, they would regret it completely. It's just one ship. Oh, it's not a ship. Chen's expression grew serious. It's a factory. A factory that's been producing warships for the past 30 years. Where do you think those 15,000 vessels came from? Admiral Gorvek's panicked voice filled the chamber. Grand Marshal, we're detecting massive energy buildups throughout the human fleet. They're preparing to fire. All ships. Attack formation. Korthak commanded. Show these mammals the price of defying the hegemony. I wouldn't do that if I were you, Admiral Chen said calmly. You see, we've been studying your tactics for half a century. We know exactly how you fight, how you think, how you react. This entire scenario was predicted and planned for. You're bluffing. Am I? She gestured to something off screen. Computer. Activate the pacification protocol. Every single display in our command center went white. When the interference cleared, I stared at readings that couldn't possibly be accurate. Sir, I whispered. According to our sensors, the human fleet just doubled again. That's impossible. 30,000 ships, sir. They now outnumber us. Admiral Chen nodded approvingly. The factory works quickly when properly motivated. We can produce a fully functional warship every 17 minutes. We've been doing it for 3 decades. Even if that's true, Korthak's voice was strained. The hegemony has reserves, hundreds of fleets. Base had reserves, Chen corrected. Computer, show them the satellite feeds. New images appeared on our screens. Hegemony bases throughout the galaxy. Empty. Destroyed. Smoking ruins where proud military installations had stood for centuries. Impossible. Korthak breathed. When? How? While you were gathering your grand armada to threaten us, we were systematically dismantling your entire military infrastructure. Turns out, when you concentrate all your forces in one place, you leave everything else remarkably undefended. I was running through tactical databases, trying to understand what I was seeing. Sir, these are our primary shipyards, our command centers, our everything. Korthak finished hollowly. The graffiti wasn't just mockery, Admiral Chen explained. It was coordination. Every species you've conquered, every survivor you left alive, every resistance cell you thought you'd crushed, they were all waiting for the signal. What signal? The signal that the hegemony had finally made the mistake we were waiting for. Concentrating your entire primary fleet to attack one target, leaving your empire defenseless. She leaned forward. Did you really think humanity would face you alone? The tactical displays updated again. Ships bearing the markings of dozens of species, races we'd conquered over the centuries, were appearing throughout hegemony space. The rebellion wasn't just human, it was everyone. This is impossible, Korthak repeated, though his voice lacked conviction. You keep using that word, Admiral Chen observed. I don't think it means what you think it means. Humans specialize in making the impossible routine. It's what we do. But Admiral Gorvek's transmission was barely coherent now. Grand Marshal, we're receiving surrender requests from 17 sector commanders. The rebellion is everywhere. Sir, I said quietly. According to these reports, the hegemony no longer controls any territory outside this system. In approximately 6 hours, Admiral Chen continued conversationally. Every hegemony military asset will be destroyed or captured. Every occupied world will be liberated. Every slave species will be free. Your empire is over. You planned all of this? Marshal, we've been planning this since the day we realized you existed. Humans don't just prepare for war. We prepare for the complete annihilation of anyone stupid enough to threaten our families. Korthak stared at the displays showing the collapse of everything he'd spent his life building. What do you want? Nothing from you. This conversation is a courtesy, not a negotiation. Admiral Chen's expression hardened. Your empire committed genocide against 17 species. Your forces have enslaved, tortured, and murdered billions of sentient beings. There will be no terms. No surrender, no mercy. You said you wanted to be left alone. We did. You chose war instead. So we chose to end you. The tactical displays showed human ships moving into attack formation. Not just thousands now, but hundreds of thousands. The factory had been busy. This is your final chance, Admiral Chen said. Order your fleet to stand down, and your deaths will be quick. And if we refuse... Admiral Chen smiled, and it was the most terrifying expression I'd ever seen on any being's face. Then you get to find out why humans are the only species that actively seeks out the most dangerous things in the universe just to fight them for fun. Korthak looked around the command center, at the displays showing the complete collapse of the hegemony, at the impossible human fleet that had somehow materialized from nothing, at the end of everything he'd known. You want war? He whispered, echoing the human message that had started all of this. Then you've chosen death. No, Marshal. Admiral Chen replied quietly. You chose war. We chose victory. The last thing I remembered was a flash of light that outshone stars. When the historical records of this day are written, they will note that the Hegemony War lasted exactly 47 minutes from first shot to final surrender. They will record that humanity fielded the largest space fleet in galactic history, built in secret over 30 years. They will document how 17 different species rose up simultaneously to overthrow their oppressors. What they won't record is the conversation I had with Admiral Chen 3 cycles later, after my rescue from the wreckage of our command ship. Why spare me? I asked. Because someone needs to tell the story, she replied. Someone needs to make sure the galaxy remembers what happens when you threaten Earth. And if someone else tries? Admiral Chen looked out at the stars, where human ships were helping liberate world after world. Then they'll learn the same lesson you did. Humans don't just fight wars. We end them permanently. B. As I write this final report, the last remnant of hegemony authority, I want to make something absolutely clear to anyone who might read it in the future. The humans kept their promise. They wanted to be left alone. When that wasn't possible, they chose death, not their own. Ours. Yes, don't make the same mistake we did. When humanity says leave us alone, listen, your life depends on it. End report. Vex, former chief intelligence analyst. The hegemony, defunct. Personal log, cycle 1247, post-liberation calendar.